How's it going, everybody? So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about grass finished versus grain finished beef and conventional beef overall, okay? So I made many videos about this before, but it's come to my attention that the YouTube search and the algorithm and stuff doesn't seem to provide these videos to people who really need them. So I figure I'll just make similar videos over and over again, but with updated information so that the people need to hear this and want to hear this the most will hear this. All right, so first and foremost, there are a couple of things that are really important in regards to your actual health outcomes. When we're thinking about, should I buy pay double the price for grain finished beef, or should I just settle for the significantly more affordable and sustainable idea of grain finished beef? The most important thing is, how is this actually going to affect my health over the long term? Because a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people, they choose to consume grain finished beef, mostly because, or grass finished beef, sorry. They usually choose grass finished beef because they strongly believe that it's going to be the healthier option. It's like the most natural and this and that, and puts their risk of things like heart disease and stuff at a significantly lower kind of risk due to the fatty acid profile and this and that, okay? So let's talk about it. Health outcomes, okay? Glycemic load of the diet and your insulin sensitivity, reactive oxygen species, and damage to the arteries that can contribute to the cascade of processes that eventually lead to heart disease and plaque, other things like brain health, Alzheimer's, etc., as well as overall body composition and longevity, things like bone mineral density, energy as you age. And what about autoimmune illnesses and things that people kind of deal with that are not really as related to metabolic health parameters, blood markers, etc. So in my opinion, the vast majority of all of these health concerns, with the exception of digestive illness and autoimmune disease, is mostly related to your metabolic health overall. So we can measure through blood tests, HDL, lipoproteins on a cholesterol panel, insulin sensitivity, hemoglobin A1C, fasting insulin, as well as your inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein and things like that. And we can also measure subjectively, how are we sleeping, how are you feeling, what about my joint health and stuff like that. And so, first of all, there are thousands and thousands of people, like hundreds of thousands of people, including myself, who have healed our autoimmune illness completely fine eating grass-finished beef. And in cases like my own and a lot of these people I'm thinking of, we have literally survived for years on almost exclusively grain-finished beef. It does not appear that people who are trying to reverse their chronic autoimmune illness, digestive illness like Crohn's disease, or even their markers of metabolic health, and including also things like cancer. I have an interview with a friend of mine, Jason Strapa, leukemia slayer, who actually put his leukemia into remission when pharmaceuticals were failing him, eating like the most polyunsaturated fatty acid rich meat possible, conventionally raised ground turkey, and conventionally raised eggs. And the predominant kind of factor involved in his leukemia going into remission within the matter of I think it was like 3 or 4 months, was not whether his turkey was like pasture raised or not, but it was actually his metabolic markers going into the healthy range, his insulin sensitivity going into healthy range, and losing a ton of body fat. And that's in alignment with Thomas Seyfried and Otto Warburg and the idea that cancer cells mostly survive from the glutamine in your diet, as well as the glucose coming in, because you combine that with fasting. right? Even though I know protein can contribute to the glutamine load, but still. And so what I'm getting at is there's a lot of ideas that, you know, oh, like the pesticides and this and that, which are definitely found in organic food still, or, you know, the fatty acid profile of grain finished beef. In practical application, people don't find it makes a huge difference, with few exceptions. Some people have autoimmune illness that is triggered by maybe some residue from grains or something, but it's very, very unlikely. So let's talk about the actual nutrient content between the two. So if you're eating ruminant animals, such as cows, buffalo, I guess goats, right? The thing is, their digestive tract, their metabolism, they are very adept and effective at converting the polyunsaturated fats from being fed grains into monounsaturated fats and saturated fats. Ruminant animals do not store polyunsaturated fats in any significant amounts compared to things like chicken and pork. You know, pigs and chickens, they're very high in polyunsaturated fats when they're being fed mostly grains and soybeans and stuff, because these animals do not convert those polyunsaturated fats into saturated monounsaturated fats. And where I'm going with this is the polyunsaturated fat content inside of these animals, inside of the cows, are dramatically low. Like, the polyunsaturated content of grain finished beef is so insignificant overall that it's irrelevant. It's not a reason to spend twice the amount of money on grass finished beef, especially if you consider the fact that if you are sacrificing overall nutrient intake and protein intake for quality, because you have to pay double the price, and you're not really getting that much of a benefit from doing so on your own health outcomes, what you're probably going to end up with is being malnourished, because you're sacrificing total nutrient intake for quality, and you're not getting enough overall amino acids, let alone the nutrients that come with the whole animal proteins overall. So what you get is an overall net negative due to under consuming the nutrients you need, because you're like eating a pound less, because you can't afford enough like grass finished beef to like really suffice for optimal nutrient intake. And of course, you have a lot of misinformed people that will insist that you only need 0.8 grams of protein per kilo of body weight to survive, and that's absolute nonsense. Have fun with your sarcopenia. It's like number one for you to get enough protein from whole animal sources. I cannot stress that enough. And whether it's grass finished or not, as long as it is coming from a ruminant animal, is irrelevant, doesn't matter. So not only is there not really much polyunsaturated fats, even in grass finished beef, like hardly at all, but the amount of omega-3 fats that you get in grain finished beef is so low. We're talking not even 120 milligrams from grass finished beef. You're not getting anywhere near enough EPA and DHA, omega-3 fats, or ALA from that grass finished beef to make a noticeable impact on your health over time. We know, if we really believe in this evidence, that we need the equivalent of around 2 grams of EPA omega-3 on a daily basis to see a clinically significant benefit. Okay? So if you're getting 120 milligrams of EPA per pound of grass finished beef or something like that, probably only 20 milligrams of that's even EPA. And so you need to eat, I don't even know, 10 or 20 times that amount, probably more than that, in order to see a clinically significant impact over time. And I guarantee no one has enough of an appetite, let alone money, to buy that, okay? Even further is you can buy super lean grain finished beef and pay super low price for it to get your adequate protein intake. And then if you really want it grass finished, like the most important thing is the fatty acid content, supposedly, you could either buy wild caught salmon and get way more, like we're talking 20 times more omega-3 from the salmon than you would in grass finished beef, or just get grass finished suet or fat. Like I literally get grass finished suet from my local butcher for $1 a pound. And I know a lot of butchers give that out for free. So there's a lot of better alternatives, and it's not even clear that it makes a big difference anyway. So the thing is, if you can afford it, especially for sustainability, support small business, farmers and stuff like that, that's cool. My beef, whether it's conventionally raised, grass finished, grain finished, is local. The other thing is most grass finished beef you get from clear across the country anyway. It's mostly imported from Brazil or New Zealand, Australia. The majority of like grass finished beef is not even local. It's shipped all over the place. It's packaged in plastic. I live in Texas. We have a lot of grain finished beef local to me. That's probably it's probably way higher quality than if I was to get something imported from across the planet, especially for people who think they have histamine intolerances. So are you really like making a net benefit on the environment with the environmental impact that shipping that meat from across the planet costs compared to like if you just got it from a local farm and it's grain finished? Don't get me started about it being fed the byproducts of human consumption that are inedible rather than the actual grains themselves that humans would eat otherwise. So the environmental impact is not as big as people think. So next on the list, so again, it doesn't have enough omega-3s for it to be a consideration. Like, eat salmon, take a fish oil supplement, or just buy the suet of grass-finished animals if you care that much. The next thing are vitamins and minerals. So, beta-carotene is something that's talked about, the yellow pigment, the fats. Look, beta-carotene is not real vitamin A anyway, so that doesn't really matter too much. The antioxidant content of beta-carotene, supposedly, in regards to human metabolism, it doesn't seem to be significant. I made videos talking about the evidence on beta-carotene supplementation. There doesn't seem to be any magic associated with it, If you really want vitamin A, eat liver. Do you really have to spend double the price for grass finished beef because the fat supposedly contains more beta-carotene rather than pro vitamin A that you could just get from liver for, again, half the price per pound? So let's see here. Oh yeah, vitamin B12, thiamine B1, riboflavin, niacin. So the B vitamins, another kind of thing that people will often say is higher in grass-finished beef. There's no evidence to support that. These foods get tested frequently for nutrient content by various organizations, including one that a lot of people don't like, the USDA. Shows there's no real significant deficiency in the vitamin and mineral content of grain-finished beef. Obviously, it's not even, it'll also depend on the season and where you source it from. And in many regards, the fatty acid content, the nutrient content, in many regards, is actually you could argue that's superior in grain-finished beef, depending on what you believe about monounsaturated fats and other things. And so, if you're looking for more B vitamins, eat liver. More vitamin A, eat liver. Even omega-3, there's a lot of omega-3 in liver. Eat salmon, or get grass-finished suet. So then, of course, we have things like whether it's organic or not. If you're buying from a local farm, even if it's grain-finished, another thing people don't take into account is the fact that grain-finished beef is only grain-fed for the last 6 to 12 weeks before it's slaughtered to fatten it up. Those animals spend almost all of their time on the same kind of pasture and farm environment that grass-finished beef does too. And so, you know, it's like, it's not this huge, major, completely different life that they live that people kind of think it is. Grass-finished and grain-finished beef both live their life almost the same the majority of the time. It's just that, you know, up to maybe at the most the last 3 months or 6 months of their life, at the very most, is at a feedlot per se. But in general, you know, most of these people who raise the animals, they're college educated. They have extremely high standards, regardless of whether it's grain finished or not. And so, overall, let's just put it simply, the nutrient intake that you get from grain finished versus grass finished, not that much different. Fatty acid composition, vitamin and mineral composition. In real practical life, most people don't see a huge difference. I think a lot of people think they do, just because the idea of getting like this high quality thing and they paid way more for it has kind of like a placebo effect associated. Environmental impact might actually be even worse, like for like grass finished. And of course, they're packaged in plastic and shipped across the world. And you know, there's the idea that xenoestrogens are actually fat soluble. So if you're worried about plastic and stuff, and you're like, oh, I gotta have my water in glass, and you eat your freaking grass finished beef shipped halfway across the world in plastic, it's so silly. But you know, most people are just hypnotized by the idea of health and the idea of things rather than the reality of it. And let's see, there's one more thing. Oh yeah, one more thing. It's an appeal to nature, but still. Humans, over our millions of years of evolution, if you really think we like consumed only like, you know, freaking ruminant animals with a similar fatty acid composition to grass-finished beef and this and that, you're sadly mistaken. You know, we've lots of different populations depending on where we are on the planet and what season it is and things like that. We consumed all sorts of birds, bugs, as well as certain nuts and things like that. We were not just purely like eating, you know, mammoths that had nothing but saturated fat in them and no polyunsaturated fats and this and that. The fact is, yeah, obviously the amount of polyunsaturated fats are concentrated in meats these days are unnatural. Probably never saw it before because we're like manufacturing these grain products that was never available to animals or humans throughout, you know, the millions of years of evolution. So sure, you can make the case that regardless of like the wide variety of foods that we ate over the millions of years, maybe we've never seen this much like omega-6 polyunsaturated fats in any food source per se. But like the evidence that we have on like the exact like fatty acid ratios of all the foods that we've eaten over time is so scarce. Like we don't actually have a whole lot of like really good evidence on what the fatty acid composition has been like. So overall, I think it comes down to, look, we probably ate way more polyunsaturated omega-6 from a lot of the weird ass like animals we ate over the millions of years compared to like relative to like the amount we get in grain finished beef. Grain finished beef hardly has any compared to all the birds and stuff that were like eating their natural diet and hogs and stuff. It just doesn't make any sense. So especially considering the Okinawans, you know, and you know, I don't want to get into that, but like, you know, even though their pigs were pasture raised most likely and probably ate mostly meat, believe it or not, and eggs and other things, I think probably get more polyunsaturated fats in those hogs than you do in, you know, grain finished ruminant animals. Not that that's, you know, pasture-raised hogs, you have significantly lower polyunsaturated omega-6 fats compared to conventionally raised ones. But I'm going to leave everyone with that. If you have any questions, post them down below. there's so much to talk about in this regard, and I've only scratched the surface. Talk to y'all next time.